Welcome back to the Constant Studio here at Delinea, RSAC 2026. We're excited to have with us our partners from Commvault. Delinea and Commvault have been longtime partners, great relationship. I'll let the Commvault team briefly introduce themselves. Let you go first.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm Vidya, Shankaran, Field CTO at Commvault.
Hey, I'm Carlson. I'm also a Field CTO at Commvault, and I am just super excited to be at another RSA.
Yeah, another RSA.
With you, Frank.
Well, we were talking earlier about how long all of us have been in this space, and we're going to get into some of that, going back to the days of Active Directory, maybe AS400s, mainframes and like.
But punch cards.
Punch cards. Don't drop your punch cards. And whether you fail your exam, if you're in class, losing your punch cards, the data center even worse. But so Commvault and Delinea worked together a long time. It's been a great partnership. Talk about it a little bit from your perspective, why you think it's been such a great partnership, how we fit together, and then we'll talk about some of the use cases we serve.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We are absolutely pumped about the partnership, mainly because of what we are able to jointly deliver to our customers, right? Because traditionally, when you look at, hey, what does cyber resilience look like, it boils down to, are you able to bring back your data, your applications? But what about the trust element?
Yeah.
Are you able to even trust that data?
Right.
And that's where the key element around the identity, the credentials being sacrosanct to an organization. Are you able to trust that credential with which you're bringing data back up? That becomes the overarching theme when you're talking about cyber resilience.
Right.
And we couldn't be more excited about the Delinea partnership, because that's exactly the value that we're able to jointly bring to our customers.
Yeah. It's critical to put those two together. I know you and I were talking a little bit about Active Directory days and the like as well, but and we'll dive deep into cyber resilience in the last topic. But any thoughts as well about just the partnership in general and how we've worked together?
Yeah, I think the partnership is absolutely great. Like, if I had to net it out, I would say that we recover the data and applications, and you recover the restore path with identity. That's such a good marriage for us to be able to do that. Because again, we had said that it's not about bringing things up; it's about trusting the things you brought up again. The trust is the number one thing that we're looking at. So this partnership works well.
Absolutely, it's just like peanut butter and jelly. You need to have both. I know a lot of times.
A little bit of bread there, all good. Sandwich, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the use cases, some of the joint customers we have. You touched upon it a little bit, but what are they seeing the benefit from, and the use cases we're solving, and maybe how easy it is to solve those use cases?
Yeah, so if I were to take a step back and think of the days when we did not have the partnership, it was definitely a rocky road, because you would go in with a sweeping assumption that you could trust the credentials, you could trust the keys to the kingdom per se, but then only to find that yes, that's not something that you can trust, because you've actually given the same levels of access back to the malicious actor as you were recovering your data and your applications. Now, that definitely slows down the organization in terms of being able to bounce back after an attack. But now with this partnership, when you look at the joint use case as well, to your point, the value actually comes in from the fact that, hey, let's look at the credentials. Is it something that you are confident to go ahead with?
Right.
Is it something that you can trust implicitly at this point in time? And then when you segue into the recovery of your business functions, it becomes a straightforward. So like the military saying goes, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. Because in the past, typically you would expect organizations to just recover data, then come across all the road bumps where, hey, looks like the data is still corrupt or the malicious actor still has unfettered access. But now you're able to take a more structured approach towards recovery, and that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, I think, and again, I used to be an auditor way back when for GT Verizon, and we used to talk about backups and just restoring them. Mm-hmm. And people forget now in this world, the access, especially elevated access, people had that originally caused the problems when trying to restore. Are you restoring the security? Those accounts are already compromised to begin with. That trust, what did you say, explicit trust? What did you say? You said trust. There were two words you used there. Trust was explicit.
Implicit.
Implicitly, yes. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that as well in your time with Commvault and just over the years, why just restoring isn't enough. And certainly from an identity security perspective, and vaulting and PAM, critical. but there's more to it than just that. Ultimately, where you need to be when you truly do recover and restore and have that true cyber resilience.
I think that's absolutely true, and the statistic is out the roof, whatever number you want to use, is that so many customers will just restore, and they just restored the actual thing that took them down in the first place.
They don't,
that's a
duh.
Yeah, it's a duh, but like when you're just trying to, in the middle of a fire,
the pressure you're trying to
you are. Yeah. No one's drinking lattes and like, hey, let's pray that thing. They're like eating pizza and sitting in smelly rooms for 24/7. So
some of the customers you work with when they're practicing, like if they're doing disaster recovery, business continuity recovery exercises, are they talking about the trust side of it too?
Yeah.
100%.
That's in their plan. It's not just let's restore the data and then let's have this department execute the test.
I always tell people, at least from my point of view, there's only two ways that you become resilient as a human. One is you get knocked down, you get up. So whether you're in a cyber attack and you get back, hopefully you're better.
Yeah.
And the other one is what athletes do all the time. They train under pressure. They do that.
Right.
So we're asking our customers, we're saying, hey, it's not just about having a plan. It's about having a plan, put a little bit of chaos in that plan. Because as the time comes, you'll have more confidence that you can restore.
You bring up a great point there, Jerry. That testing under pressure is exactly how you build muscle memory too. Because a lot of times what happens is you just assume that your teams are better equipped to respond to that crisis, but sometimes it just blows up in your face. But being prepared, making sure that you're baking in the identity resilience aspect of things in your tabletop exercises on a go-forward basis is definitely something that's absolutely front and center. That is practically our best practice recommendation for the past several months now.
So, quick story. Next time I was an auditor, GT Verizon. Circa 1993, we're doing a recovery of one of our data centers, Comdisco facility, Secaucus, New Jersey. The backup tapes were all in Boston. So someone from GT Labs go to the backup tapes. These are big mag tapes. Into their trunk. Drove them from Boston 6 hours through a snowstorm to Comdisco. We're on the clock 72 hours, paying a lot of money for this recovery at this disaster recovery site. Took the tapes out, took them in the data center there, all frozen.
Oh my goodness.
Bringing out hair dryers. First 4 hours of test, I'm as the auditor observing we're hair drying. So the point is though, until you test and doing your tabletops, you don't know, and test under pressure, your point. Something came up that was unexpected.
Okay, listen,
and how you pivot to that and you learn from that.
I'm going to tell you one thing right now. A cyber resilience plan not tested, it doesn't work.
I wouldn't even call it a plan.
Well, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Does not work.
Doesn't matter how fancy it is. Not tested,
doesn't work.
A cyber resilience plan is a sub-piece or a sub-component of an incident response plan. And that cyber resilience plan, to your point, if it's not tested, it's useless. But also what is equally important is it's a living and breathing document. So you have to keep testing, iterate on it, figure out all the gaps.
Not a one-time exercise.
Definitely not. And identity is definitely not a one-time exercise. Because let's say perhaps someone's been spoofing my credentials. That is going to show up as frequently as you're going to watch for vulnerabilities or gaps in why does Vidya have unfettered access to payroll compensation.
No, it's ironic how this conceptually is not new.
No.
The technology is new. And we're here at RSA and everyone's talking about AI and AI agents, but some of the concepts here, building a tabletop plan, that plan, how it has to be revisited and edited and updated is not new. So just-in-time access is a topic that's been really hot lately, along with zero standing privilege. At Delinea, we do a lot of really cool stuff with just-in-time access. Obviously, it's tied to credentials and secrets and our identity security solutions. But curious, as that came to be with your customers, and you talk about updating the plan, what's your guys' thoughts about working in just-in-time access and how important it's become?
Yeah, in fact, especially because it's a regularly updated plan. People perceive it as hey, probably if I can make my identity persistent, I'm in a better position. They couldn't be more wrong. Because just-in-time credential, when it's automated, when it's seamless and intuitive, it's actually a massive weapon in their artillery. Because what that lets you do is, from a malicious actor's perspective, if I were one, I would thrive on the fact that those credentials are persistent, so I can move laterally and vertically within an organization. But when it's just in time and just enough.
Just enough. That's right. They're in pairs. Just in time, just enough.
That is right.
I love that. Yes.
So just in time and just enough access is exactly where organizations should be architecting for their identity resilience. And of course, once that is situated, the rest of it automatically follows
Right,
suit.
yeah, that's how, at Delinea, we work really hard on that. Just in time, just enough. I think here that we even have some hats, just in time hats. You might have seen me at the booth. So.
I'm going to go get one, Hey, can we rewind a little bit and say, why is that even important? So, I'm an old directory guy, worked at Microsoft 25 years, Novell for 5 years prior.
Novell Networks,
the thing about back then, it was a directory problem.
Yes.
Now it's a control plane for the business problem.
Right.
And the thing about it is the people that can look inside that control plane with granularity like Delinea and us do, can now apply zero trust principles to that, which are two of the ones you just talked about, just in time, just enough. So that's why as we evolved over time, it's not a directory problem anymore. So it's like this. I like the analogy is that, hey, I asked my friend to water my plants when I'm on vacation, but my friend lost the keys. And those keys are found. Now someone goes in and smashes my TV and drinks my beer. Full access to everything, So that's how we're treating. Like if you have the keys, it's the keys to the front door, it's the keys to the entire building, it's even the keys to the recovery room.
That's right.
So this is now why we have to have Delinea on top of that, saying, you know what, we're going to constantly measure that. Just enough, just in time. It's the way we have to do it.
It makes total sense. It's such a great fit. Let's wrap up here. Final thoughts on just the overall importance of cyber resiliency, and we've touched upon some of it already. The definition, especially from a Commvault perspective, it's much more than just recovering from the backups. But especially in the cybersecurity world, resiliency is becoming critical, and you guys are front and center of that. We are supporting and working together. But just final thoughts to share or reiterate some of the stuff we already talked about in that regard.
Yeah, I think traditionally we've definitely seen a hyper-focus on automating, especially from a data and application recovery perspective, kind of borrowing from the tenets of AI itself. Having human in the loop is a must-have. And by that token, making sure that identity is the first tier 0 set of capabilities and functions that you're bringing back online would be a strong recommendation, because once that is situated, at least you have the keys to the kingdom to unlock with.
It's foundational, starting with that.
Absolutely.
For me, I think an important thing for all of our customers are like, you got to figure out, we call it minimum viable company. What that really means is to say, hey, if you were knocked down, what are the things you need to get a company heartbeat back? We're not saying full restore, that could be months or years.
Yes, exactly.
But we're saying, hey, and it's different for everybody. If you're like a healthcare provider, it's probably EMR. If you're an educational institution, it might be the teacher's payroll opposed to the kids thing, right? So we're helping them to figure out what is that minimum viable thing, and the foundations of that are the identity, because if you don't have control of your own airplane, someone else is flying, like any analogy you want to use, but the idea is that it's a struggle for companies to identify that. It's not a business continuity conversation necessarily. That's part of it, but it's like, what is that minimum thing? And then you practice that. Practice that. Did I say practice that?
Practice that. Practice it again. Practice the practice.
Especially when it has supply chain implications.
That's
too.
totally true. Totally true.
The honor of me loves that. It's risk-based approach, identifying where the true risks are at. Starting with identity, the systems, the data, and making business decisions how you're going to mitigate those risks accordingly, because not all identities are equal, not all applications are equal, not all data is equal. And from a recovery perspective, you have to have a precedent on what you want to recover in what order to restore your business as quick as possible. What's critical?
I would say, as I was going to part with words, I would say, again, we already said it, but I would say Delinea and Commvault are restoring trust.
I love that.
Not workloads, not identity, because if you can't trust any of those, you don't have recovery.
Without trust, you don't have anything.
You don't.
Plus one to that.
That should be a new tagline.
That should be. Let's make some hats.
Let's put ourselves on marketing. Let's make some hats. So it's been lovely chatting with you folks. Well, I want to thank Commvault for being a great partner. Thank you for joining us here in the content studio. We're continue to love the partnership. We're going to do some exciting things in the future, and looking forward to where we take both our companies.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.